whiskey serenade. Maybe we were better off before. Maybe we were better off before. I felt lost to you. You'll see, even when I run my goddamn mouth, I'll be back to do it again when I can. Even after I apologize to you and lay it down. Even after I apologize to you, I lay it all down. Maybe we were better off before. Maybe we were better off before. I felt lost to you.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jacob from Escape the Basement. I got Aaron Gentle with me, just doing a quick interview. He's going to play us a couple songs, and we'll ask some questions, get to know him a little bit. What's up, Aaron?
What's up, dude?
How's it going?
Good.
So first question, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are.
So my name's Aaron. I'm a paramedic. I've been doing that for about 7 years now, I guess. I've been a musician since I was 14. And yeah.
All right. What initially drew you to music?
Well, where it started is I didn't have there's no music in my family. I was the first person in my family to ever play an instrument or anything like that. But what it was, I wasn't drawn to music like as any sort of instinctual thing. What happened was I was 14 years old and I was smoking weed in my house with a couple of my friends. Yeah. My mom came home and caught us doing that, and I got grounded for like 3 months. And I had this old guitar that my parents had bought for me a couple of years before that in a flea market. And while I was grounded, I just sat on my computer back in 1999 now, and was looking up guitar tabs and teaching myself how to play. And so at that time we had Napster. This is really aging me for for how this all came to be. But we had Napster, and I was listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin because I was 14 and smoking weed, and that's what you did. And so I started learning Led Zeppelin tunes, and I had a knack for it, and I've been playing ever since.
All right. What do you remember? What kind of guitar it was?
No, it was. I don't remember the brand, but it was one of the old like classical guitar styles.
Yeah. With
the headstock with the tuning pegs that went backwards.
Oh yeah.
They didn't go like through a hole and you wound them around. You had to wind them around the sides of them.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin. You have a favorite song by them?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think it's probably Since I've Been Loving You off of Led Zeppelin 3. I think it's got the best guitar solo that Jimmy Page has ever done.
All right. How many years did you say you've been playing guitar?
Well, I'm 40. I just turned 40, so it would be 26 years I've been playing.
Okay. As you've progressed in playing, how would you describe your musical style now and how you play? And has that changed over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started playing, I was like basically mimicking Led Zeppelin, right? So like I got my first electric shortly after I started learning how to play because I picked it up. Like I just had a knack for playing blues. So I got an electric guitar a couple of months after that, and I'd sit in my living room like with our big stereo and play Led Zeppelin 2 and Led Zeppelin 3 and just play along with the songs. So I started out very blues heavy, and then I got into a band when I was 15 or 16 with a couple of high school friends, and they were more into like what was popular at that time. So it would have been 2001. So it was like a lot of like Green Day and Seether and like Z93 rock, sure. You know what I mean? So we played all that kind of stuff, but that actually like made me better as a musician, learning how to play like bar chord transitions and stuff like that, and playing with the drummer. And so my style kind of changed from blues to kind of like a more of like a rock thing in my late teens. And then when I went off to college, I started getting into a lot of like emo, like hardcore scream emo, stuff like that. And that definitely turned me more into like an indie style guitar player. And I still feel like that's kind of where I'm at. Like it's a mix of blues, folk, and then like if I'm playing electric, definitely more like indie, Modest Mouse, brand new, kind of like twangy, off key sounding, jangly crap mixed in with like other pretty sounds because I just like the juxtaposition of it.
All right. Yeah. All right. What so as we know, or I know anyways, is that you're a phenomenal songwriter. I respect a lot of the songs. How I know Aaron is through being a medic with him on the road up in I don't know if we should say where.
Yeah, doesn't matter. In Michigan.
In Michigan. And I was bringing my guitar to work, and Aaron's like, somebody's like, "Oh, I think Aaron used to play at bars and stuff," and I was like, "Oh, no kidding." And as soon as he saw it, he's like, "Do you mind? Can I have that real quick?"
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, this guy is clearly going to be an influence of mine. So, something that I struggle with is like, or I guess I shouldn't say struggle with. I am still learning is my songwriting process. Mm-hmm. Can you walk me through your songwriting process?
All right. So this is like what I told you before we started this podcast. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Sure. So because I am like going through it really hard right now, and I have been for about 6 or 7 years. I didn't start singing until I was probably about 24, 25.
Okay.
I was just playing like lead or rhythm in bands or just like working on music by myself. So I didn't start singing until I was 24, 25. I do not have a great singing voice. The music that I was listening to at that time was like very indie, like the band Bright Eyes. I don't know if you're familiar with them. He's like famously got a bad voice, but he's like a bad good singer. Kind of another good example is Modest Mouse.
Okay.
Like a bad good singer. So like those guys kind of gave me the confidence, like, all right, I can try doing this thing. So I just started singing, and like, you know, I played for you earlier when we started this, and like I'm not going to be on American Idol. I'm not going to be on The Voice. I'm not hitting crazy Mariah Carey notes, and that's not who I am. But like guys like Bob Dylan and stuff and Bright Eyes, Modest Mouse gave me the confidence to sing. So then I was like, well, if I'm going to be singing not that great, I got to have some fucking strong lyrics to carry me through. Like I know I'm a good enough guitar player and a good enough songwriter to do that. So I really focused on writing lyrics. And I've always been an avid reader. I think you know that.
Yeah.
So I read about a book a week, at least. When I'm really in reading, I'm reading like 2 books a week. So it kind of came natural to me to songwrite. And the way that I would do it is sometimes I would sit down and write a ton of words out. I'd sit down for an hour or 2 and just write nonstop. And then I would read back what I wrote, and I'd be like, oh, that's a good line. I'd pick up my guitar, I would start playing something, and I would sing that line over and over and over again until I found something that worked. And then I would just build the lyrics off that one line in both directions. Like usually the line would end up in the middle of the song as like a throwaway in the middle of a verse. But I would build off of the one thing that I liked, and I would grow it both ways to the end and to the start of the song lyrically.
Like yeah.
And then though, like as I progressed farther along into my songwriting stuff, it turned into I never wrote anything down. I would just pick up my guitar and I would start singing, and then I would just start singing random words, and I'd be like, oh, that like the syllables hit right with the whatever I'm playing, and then I would build off of that.
Yeah.
And then like draw from, like I've written an entire album about my deployment to Afghanistan. I wrote an entire album about this girl that I knew in Japan. That was just like a heartbreaking, mid-20s, poor me type thing. But so like, just kind of, just like any other musician, you just draw inspiration from what's around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Back to your voice. I think you have a phenomenal voice.
Thank you. One. I was not fishing for compliments.
No. But it's like you said, it's original though. Like if I heard your voice in a bar somewhere and I was just walking by, I'd be like, that's Aaron Gentle. I know you,
right?
From anybody in the world. Like, so, and I think it definitely suits the music style that you play too. From what you were saying, like occasionally hitting like the off keys and just things like that. I think all of that kind of puts the cherry on top to who you are as a musician as a package. I think it all sounds awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So when you're writing, and I know we've talked about this, you've had periods where you've gotten not out of music, but you've definitely put it on the back burner for a minute and then you get back into it. What do you do to get through a plateau of either learning and trying to be better as a guitarist, or what do you do to get past a little bit of writer's block and to get back in the groove of things?
So the playing part's easy. Like as any musician, when you start playing, if you're going to be playing for a long time, 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to plateau at 10, 20, 30 times.
Yeah.
Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on like what your buildup is, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. But so anytime I've plateaued, which has been dozens and dozens of times as a guitar player, I always like try to listen to music that is completely outside of my genre of music.
Yeah.
And that usually tends to help me. Like when I was really heavy into writing, when I was playing in bands and playing like writing albums and recording albums, and then like playing up in DC and in New York and in North Carolina, like when we'd play all over the place, I listened to a ton, like an absolute ton of hip hop. So like listening, it was specifically like Mos Def and Black Star and Common, but some of their like beats and samples that they used were from like old 50s like doo-wop songs and like old 50s blues songs, and that was like kind of, and then hearing those with different beats than I was accustomed to in my rock bands that I was playing in, it kind of informed my playing and let me try different things within what I was actually doing.
Sure.
So that usually helped me get out of it. Classical music too, strangely, like Tchaikovsky
really?
Piano music for some reason always helps me think about music in a different way. And I say this more past tense, like when I was about 10 years ago.
Okay.
When I was really still working at it. And then, like you were talking about getting out of music, like I've been out of it for probably about 5 or 6 years now, where I've been like picking up my guitar and playing, but I'm not like doing anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just recently, like before you asked me to do this, about a couple of months ago, I just started picking up and just instinctively started playing again. And I've been writing a lot, not lyrically, but just music stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been starting to record that. And I think I'm going to try something different now and like get away from lyrics and singing, because I think that's what's kind of hamstringing me right now, is that I feel like if I write a song musically, I have to write lyrics and sing to it. Otherwise, it's not worth anything.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
I do. I think, I mean, I don't feel that it's accurate, but I share the same thought.
Yeah.
My cousin sent me this guy. Is called 100 Stoned, I think, is on YouTube, and he's also on Spotify, and he just does primarily instrumentals, but it's blues, and that's when I kind of realized that wasn't entirely true, because I just throw that stuff on, and I could listen to that for hours.
Yep.
And it's so good, and but I do feel like I need to put lyrics to it to be a songwriter. And that's not necessarily true.
It's not at all.
Yeah. I can write a good chord progression and a good like solo, or at least I want to. I don't know if I can, but and it can still be a song. It's still mine. It's still a piece of art that I'm putting out into the world, and it still is an expression of who I am. So.
Yeah, the way like when I was talking about classical music, like you consider Tchaikovsky and Chopin and Mozart, they didn't. I mean, Mozart, I guess, did write some lyrics, but Chopin, Tchaikovsky, or a score of other classical musicians are songwriters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yep. So
100%.
that's kind of how I've been trying to reshape viewing being a musician.
So you said you're trying to get away from being a lyricist and kind of go more just towards writing the instrumentals for it?
What I think I'm going towards is getting away from having a predetermined notion of what being a musician is, which is, for my what I've always done has been to write a song, write lyrics, sing it.
Yeah.
And that is like, that's not what everybody does. And more, it's just because I want to start playing again and feeling like creative and good about it. And I'm to the point now where I'm not playing shows anymore. I'm not playing bars anymore. So if I'm going to play my guitar, I'm doing it solely for stuff like what I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Just recently when you picked up the guitar, you said you instinctively just started playing. Did you feel like you were hard blocked in any way? Like it just was entirely natural. You were just like, this is what's up.
I mean, other than the fact that I didn't have any calluses on my hands.
Yeah.
So that it was like crazy
5
painful.
minutes in, you're
Yeah.
like, I think I'm going to let's try this again tomorrow.
Right. I mean, it definitely would took me like a week or two to build my calluses back up. But no, like it was nice. Like I said, I've been still picking it up and playing, but over the last couple of months, I've been playing it a lot more. And songs have just kind of been coming out.
Yeah.
Which is a great feeling for somebody that hasn't written anything of any substance in 6 or 7 years.
Sure.
So
now you used to play out in bars mostly. You said you used to be part of a band a while back, and then did some solo stuff for a while. When you did that, did you ever were you comfortable enough with yourself, or even so being comfortable with yourself, did you find yourself with any kind of performance anxiety or just nerves that you needed to get past?
not really. I've always been lucky in the way that like I'm built genetically, I guess. However, I get crazy nervous before, like I was crazy nervous before I came to do this with you.
Yeah.
But like for playing my guitar and stuff and being on stage, I feel even this was still, because there's not a crowd, I feel like I'm holding back. And for whatever reason, when I have a crowd and there's a microphone, I do better every single time.
Really?
I feel way more comfortable. I feel more confident in being able to really like open up vocally and get into the mic, because there's ambient noise. So it makes me feel like I can like dig in a little bit more as a musician.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel better. I've never gotten on stage and been like, oh boy. Like, cause I played in Princeton with a couple of my bandmates. We had like 4 different bands. We all played with each other. And there was, I don't know, 150 people in this Princeton auditorium. And it was just the 3 of us with our acoustic guitars and banjos. And like, it was the best show we've ever played. It was amazing.
Really?
And that was probably the most people I've ever played for, like 150, 200 people.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was easily my best performance of all time.
Really?
Like my voice sounded great, and I hate my voice, but I was like, I can sing. Like it was nice. Yeah.
I feel like that's a good perspective. Like something that I want to take away from that is all eyes aren't on you.
No.
You know, they're there to listen to the music, and like most of they're enjoying it, but they're not critiquing you. Like they're not out there to just let loose, do what you need to do, and it's probably going to sound like the best.
Right. And I mean, even if they are critiquing you, who fucking cares?
Yeah.
You know?
Who are you?
Right. Give a shit. But yeah, I don't know. Like that's how I've always viewed it. And again, I think for people that are just starting to play or starting to play shows, the ambient noise and the noise in the bar that you're playing in is your friend. That means that you can dig into your music and you don't have to worry about like, oh, a wrong note here, or I'm a little off key, because you have ambient noise around you.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's like how I just contextualize it mentally, but I feel like you just play better.
Yeah.
Just use that to your advantage.
So going back to the whole somebody critiquing you, have you ever had a time, because I think about this all the time, even putting out YouTube content, it's like, well, what if somebody's just absolutely digging into me, like behind my back or whatever? It doesn't really matter, but have you ever had somebody like come up to you after a show and give you some kind of negative feedback, and how do you deal with that?
Never. No, not after a show. I'm not trying to sound like cocky or conceited.
Yeah.
I've just never had that happen to me.
Yeah.
But the group of guys that I had when I lived in DC, we all played in each other's bands. We were all like brutal to each other though.
Yeah.
Like that was because we all, at that point in my life, between 25 and 27, 28 years old, like I was convinced that I was going to be doing that for the rest of my life.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to hit something with one of these bands that I'm in, and this is going to be the rest of my life. So we were like working very hard. Like I was in the Marines at that time. But as soon as
Thank
I
you
was
for your service.
thank you for yours. Shut up. But yeah, I mean, like, as soon as I got off work, so I'd get off at 4:30 or 5, I would be writing and playing until 11:30, 12 each night, every single day, every day. And then on the weekends, we were at one of our buddies' houses in the basement playing all day long, every single weekend. And then we'd go play shows. And so the guys that I was with, like, if I brought them something, I was like, what do you guys think of this? And it was bad, they'd be like, that fucking sucks. So we're going to do this instead. And I'd be like, okay. But then when they'd bring stuff to me, I'm like, absolutely the fuck not. We're not doing this. And then they'd be like, okay. And then we'd all work together. So, like, we did critique each other, but it wasn't like, it was to make each other better. It wasn't coming from a
True
mean spirit.
constructive criticism.
Yeah. But no, to answer your question with the show, that's never happened to me afterwards. I've definitely played shows where I've had people not do anything while I was on stage, where I'd be like in DC especially, we'd open up for bands. So you'd have 100 people there as the the club starting to fill in, and we'd put our heart and souls into a 30-minute set, and people would just be standing there, and that is devastating.
Yeah.
But like, so you just gotta pull through that. Like, it's gonna happen no matter who you are.
Yeah.
It still happens to big bands, like, where the crowd's just terrible.
Yeah.
And you just gotta power through that, because that is the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah. I could see how it could be.
It's very demoralizing.
What advice would you give to aspiring musicians, aspiring songwriters?
Just keep playing. Play through the plateaus. Play through the times when you feel like you're not a real musician and that you suck. And if you're confident enough in your abilities to never feel like that, then more power to you. But I feel like anybody that puts any significant amount of time into music or into art in general is 80% of it is riddled with self-doubt.
Yeah.
And the biggest battle of being a musician or an artist or anything is just powering through that 80% until the 20% of the time when you're feeling like, oh, I'm real good at this. And you just, when you have those moments where you feel that way, enjoy them and don't take that for granted.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had that when you've been playing your shows or writing or practicing with your band, where you those fleeting moments where you're like, oh, okay, and all the sounds come together the right way, and you get like that euphoric feeling through your body that you can't describe to anybody else unless they've had it.
Mostly when after I started the band thing, like playing with other people and being able to, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's the acoustic and it's my voice that I'm trying to match, and it's like, I feel like all eyes are on me, but with the band thing, I feel like I can just crank up my amp, crank up my Helix, whatever I'm playing through, and I'm just ripping. And when the whole band's on sync and we hit like that bridge just right, or that pause in a song just right, and then we get right back into it, it's like, that's my 20%. That's when I feel good as a musician. I'm like, we're doing something. Like, that was magic.
Yep.
I know you mentioned the one performance that you said that was in DC. You said when you just said everything, like you just played your heart out.
Oh, that wasn't that was, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of performances. In DC.
Yeah. Do you have any memorable performances that you just I will always think about as like top of the list for you?
Yeah, definitely the show that my friends Ian and Patch and I played at Princeton. That was a pretty special moment because it was cool. You know, we were like a bunch of young dudes playing at like a really prestigious university. Like, my sister and a couple of her friends flew out to come watch us, and it was just a really, really cool experience. The venue was it was amazing. The kids there were very receptive. It was just an all-around pretty amazing experience. And then I played at it was like I guess I was going to say a music competition, but it's a battle of the bands. I played at a battle of the bands in, I want to say it was Arlington, Virginia, that had a huge turnout. I mean, there was so many people there. And there was like, I think 15 bands altogether, and my band took third, which I thought was pretty cool.
Freaking sweet.
When we were playing, like the crowd was like really into it, and like they'd never heard us before, so that was cool to see. And then I played a show in DC right before I left for Japan. It was this play, I forgot the name of the club. Either way, it doesn't matter. But I had played there, I don't know, probably 250 times over 3 years that I lived there. I played there all the time. And towards the end of my time there, like the last year, 6 months, whatever, last few shows that I played, people were starting to sing my songs while I was playing them. It wasn't a lot of people, but it was like 15, 20 people, or people would be like, hey man, like because I had an album out, like I had it up on SoundCloud, and I had one up on GarageBand. Or no, it was actually SoundCloud at that time. Yeah. And so they're like, I listened to your album. It's so good. And I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest feeling in the world. So yeah, those were probably the biggest moments for me.
That's sweet. The Battle of the Bands, were you guys doing primarily originals?
It was all originals.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every band, you had to be original.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I'd like to, the guitarist that, Corey, he's getting his solo album out. Coming here soon, but I want to do some of his originals. Yeah. Only with his blessing and with his guidance, because I want it to sound how he wants it to sound. I don't want to put out something that he's not happy with, but that's something that I want to kind of start doing. And I asked everybody, I'm like, does anybody have anything they've written? Like, we can start writing something now. Right. Like, I think that'd be a lot of fun too. Yeah. Something I want to explore after we get our feet off the ground is, just getting together one Saturday and outside of band practice and writing, I think would be sweet.
So have you guys not, so your band that you're in right now, have you guys you've not written any songs together? You're playing Corey songs primarily?
We are primarily just classic rock covers.
Okay, got it.
70s through now rock and a little bit of everything in between.
Right.
Which we've been having a lot of fun with. There's just a lot of hits out there. Because the goal is to play gigs, and I think that, like, I've seen this a couple times where if you're just trying to do originals out the gate, I think it's hard to get your feet off the ground versus if you start doing covers and you slowly start mixing in your originals. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this with a local band around here. It's they're called Tweed and Dixie. They tour kind of all around. But after we've seen them a couple times around here, we look them up and we start singing their songs. And like the one song is My Wife's Ringtone,
That's cool.
And when we saw them the last time at the bus stop, it was like, he's like, does anybody have any requests? And like I requested one of their songs, and he's like, that's freaking awesome. Yeah,
that is awesome.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
But they do same thing, like primarily covers, and then they sprinkle in the originals, and then I think over time your originals kind of gain some traction, and as they get requested, maybe you throw them in a little bit more, and like that's kind of my goal, but. We got a long road before we get there. We're still a baby band.
Right. I will say to that point, though, I think it is very where you live.
Yeah.
Because like if you're starting out a band and you're living in a city center in a bigger city.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to start with your original stuff.
Really?
Because they don't want they don't want to hear you go up there and play like like a Led Zeppelin cover. They don't want to hear that.
Cover bands are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, and so you'll get people, in my experience, like you'll get people that will do that, and it's fine, but then they'll always mix in originals. I just feel like the majority of people that, like, when I was in that, and I'm not the authority on this is just my personal experience. Yeah. That, like, when we would play, like, in DC or, like, when we played in New York, and stuff like that, would you go see other small club bands play, and they never played covers. Everything was about getting your original stuff because everybody was looking to get picked up.
Yeah, yeah.
But
no, that's a good point.
So if you're living in an area where you're not worrying about getting picked up and you're playing to get the crowd into you, you have to play covers.
Yeah.
Just like you said, to start out, to get people into you,
yeah.
And then start giving them original stuff.
Which mid-Michigan, I feel like, is definitely that area.
100%.
We're primarily rural. A lot of our small towns have like a bar in them, and like that's where we're trying to play because that's where we live and that's what we got to work with.
Absolutely. Did that sound like an elitist prick thing for me to say just then?
No.
Okay.
I thought it was a great perspective.
Yeah, it definitely depends on where you live.
I never even thought about that. Where cover bands probably are like, especially like Nashville too.
They don't want that.
Yeah.
They don't want people going out there playing Morgan Wallen covers.
Yeah, they got Morgan Wallen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's a really good point. No, I didn't think so at all.
You have to be original, otherwise there's nobody's going to pay you, for starters. Nobody's going to book you.
Yeah.
If you go in there and you're like, yeah, I'm going to play a Cake cover and a Tom Petty cover and a Radiohead cover, they're like, get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah.
You're not getting any money from us.
That's
go
a good
away.
point.
Yep.
But I feel like the bars around here do. They're like, you have to show them that, like, here's a YouTube video of like us playing AC/DC, and they're like, hell yeah, man, get in here.
Yeah, we need that right now.
Right now.
No, 100%. All the show like bars and stuff that I've played here, it's 90% covers.
Yeah.
And even that, like, because I don't like the way that musician that I am. Like, I play like all my covers are like weird bands that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so like I have to like really force myself to learn the Tom Petty songs, to learn the, whatever the popular songs, which is actually a good exercise and it's fun to do.
Yeah.
I like doing it. Yeah.
Do you?
My originals get received like shit here.
Really?
Anytime I've played any of my original stuff since I've moved back home, it's just like deadpan. But that's not what they're there for. That's not their fault. That's a me problem. And my shit's not catchy enough to get that type of crowd.
I don't know. It's a they problem.
Anytime you're putting anything out,
I feel like if you're
problem.
in an area where, like we've talked about, where the areas we're in, it's hard to get that audience. But I feel like if you were in like downtown Grand Rapids,
I would do a lot better.
Super super receptive to that.
Well, I would have done a lot better in like 2013 down there, like at the peak of indie folk home music.
Yeah.
I would have crushed if I went to Grand Rapids.
Who I know you talked about Led Zeppelin and from when you first started playing. What are some other, and we've talked about genres already, but do you have any other musical influences that really stand out to you?
My primaries, like my go-to like desert island bands that I would listen to for the rest of my life are Radiohead and Pink Floyd.
Outstanding.
Those are my two favorite bands of all time. The Brits do it better than we ever have. And I will go to my grave contending that Pink Floyd as a combination of musicians and Radiohead as a combination of musicians is the best combinations of musicians in the history of music.
Yeah.
And that I will die on that hill.
Pink Floyd just, I don't know, everything. I'm not entirely familiar with Radiohead. Oh. I know of them. I need to get more into them. But.
Yeah. So Radiohead, much like Pink Floyd, has like different. Am I allowed to get into this?
Yeah.
Okay. They have like different eras that are very, very distinct, which makes them one of my. And I guess the Beatles do too, but like Pink Floyd started out as like a '60s like weird, like psychedelic flowers on the wall like club music.
Yeah.
Like that weird, just weird for the sake of weird music. And then they transitioned into like this alternative, progressive rock, like experimental band that was like playing with soundscapes. They were the first band to really use electronic beats.
Yeah.
Which I always really loved. Their production methods were really unique, whatever. And then they did Dark Side of the Moon, which was like their big intro album to the masses. But then they did The Wall, which is like a theater musical style album, and like I don't know, they just had very distinct phases. And Radiohead especially, because they're our generation.
Sure.
Like you have Creep, which is off their first album, Pablo Honey, and that album is all just like 90s grunge rock.
Yeah.
And then they put out OK Computer, which was kind of 90s grunge rock, but it was like 90s grunge rock that took acid and then was like reading Plato.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like started morphing there. And then they put out, they put out the Bends, then they put out OK Computer. And then they released an album called Kid A, which is a techno, like almost like Eurotrash beat music.
Yeah.
But like they did it with rock music incorporated into it, and they just constantly been pushing this limit. And every album that they've put out, people hated it initially because they're like, this is not Radiohead.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, they're like, that's the best album of all time. And then they do it again.
Really?
And then everybody hates it. And then 4 years later, it was like, that's the best album of all time. And they've been doing that their entire career. And I really respect that.
Yeah.
Because they don't give a shit about what what they think people think they should do.
Sure.
And I've always loved that about them.
Yeah.
And not only like the rebellious attitude of them as a band, but like the quality of music is unbelievable. You really need to listen to a couple of like In Rainbows.
I definitely will.
I'll give you some albums. In Rainbows is an album that you need to listen
Sounds
to.
good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Are there any big songs or projects that as you get back into music again this time, that you're starting to work on and that you want to share with everybody?
No. I am going, what I want to do, I guess, over the next year is really put together like a full 10-song instrumental album.
Yeah.
Just for me. And obviously I'll send it to like you and Kyland and our friends, but just to see if I can like do something that's interesting and not like a variation of G, C, D, A minor.
Yeah.
And then switching those around and
Yeah.
making little folk songs with them.
Yeah.
That I can mask the brainless songwriting guitar-wise with lyrics and vocals.
Yeah.
I want to be forced to like really focus on my playing ability. And then my music theory and putting together segments of music that are interesting to listen to as you move through them, and not just a variation on the same chords that I've been playing for 26 years.
Like the song itself, the instruments themselves tell the story.
Yes.
Yeah, throughout.
And actually writing melody lines
Yeah.
with my guitar and like really working on like overdubbing and trying to create guitar harmonies that are telling a story and not just me flexing my ability to play fast. Because I feel like that's what I fall back on. I can play fast and I can do blues licks really well.
Yeah.
And it's like good enough to trick people into thinking that I'm a good guitar player, but I want to like challenge myself musically.
I feel like what's cool about that whole concept is like if you're into music and you're into music theory and you hear that, you're like, that's really tough to play, or that does tell a story and it makes sense. Like, it's cool how you're flowing that. But what's more important and what I think is even cooler is that story you're trying to tell with the instruments. People that aren't into music theory, you can feel that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like, it doesn't matter if you can see it on paper. Like, you can feel that story throughout the whole thing. And when you come back to like the same, the same three notes, that bass of the song, and they're like, I recognize that. The ear recognizes
Right.
that. But then you dabble outside of it. You bring them a little farther, and then you bring it back.
Yeah.
To a home stretch. I think that's super cool.
And you see that in movie scores.
Yeah.
Like every movie would be garbage if it didn't have a good score to it. Like I think like Interstellar is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Without that score to that movie, I don't know if I'd watch it.
Yeah.
It really like it tells the entire story of that movie. No words, no nothing.
I never thought about that with like in theater or like movies.
All movies would just be like random sounds, people talking, and then just cuts
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
without music pulling the entire thing along.
No, 100%.
Yep. And then you notice it in bad movies. Bad movies, the acting can be like whatever, but if the score is bad, it sucks.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that. Well, Aaron, do you have anything else you want to add to
No,
the interview?
I don't think so. This was really fun. I appreciate you having me to do
Yeah,
this.
100%.
This feels a little forced now. I'm like, thanks for having
Yeah.
me along. But no, this was actually really cool. Your setup down here it's fucking awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes time for your instrumental thing, if you need a place to throw on some other instruments that you need, if you want to do the drums and all that stuff or whatever,
Yeah,
hit me up.
I would love to do that.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
no problem. Now to our Community Overdrive segment.